Hello there, and welcome back to another video. I am Ramona. This is the Smell of Logic channel, where we read Reddit stories and personal experiences. Lots of supernatural stuff sometimes, but sometimes advice, or sometimes a little more lighthearted fare. This one is not so lighthearted, though. This is a, hey Reddit, what have you ever seen in kind of ghost creature, mythological, creepy entity thingy? Part two, because there was a lot of replies on this one. So here we go. Ready? When I was about to go to bed, I saw a white, grayish face that was all distorted and sunken, peeking out from under my curtains, shape-wise almost like that of a painting of the Screaming Man. This face was just a face, no body, or nothing, or anything else. Safe to say, I mentally shit my pants that night. You mentally shit your pants? Okay. A couple of months after my sweet calico fur baby died, I was standing in the kitchen, looking at my two new fur babies nestled up on the couch. I was still so sad and wondered what my girl would have thought of her rambunctious brothers. I felt something rubbing up against my leg, and for a brief second, I saw my girl. A little over a month ago, I had to put my cat down because she was suffering from an illness related to old age. The next day, I was making my bed and lifted up a blanket, fresh out of the dryer, nice and warm, and my beloved kitty was under there. I saw her as plain as day. I blinked, and then she was gone. When I was in high school, I dropped my friend off at her house on a country road and continued on my way home. In my rearview mirror, I could swear I saw a very pale white man with burns on his body. In a split second, he was gone. I mentioned this to my friend's sister. Turns out this guy had been lurking around recently, and they tried to respectfully exorcise him from their house. A month later, my friend's house burned to the ground. I understand that people believe what they believe, but I have a hard time believing any of these stories. They are very vivid, such as the person literally petting a cat sitting on their chest, and they found out it was a ghost cat. I wonder what's different about me, and that I've never had an experience after growing up and learning about the realities of ghosts and monsters, etc. Again, please don't take this as me calling you liars. I simply cannot understand how you can so clearly feel these things, and yet there's no actual possibility that it could happen for real. Aside from sleep paralysis, that is a medical psychiatric phenomenon we know about. But I like these stories. They are fun to read. I took peyote at this church out in the middle of nowhere in the desert in Arizona. The property had an old white horse that walked around. The people running the place told me that the Native American man who had founded the church and that he had died a year previous. So I'm sitting out in the desert by myself under the influence of peyote, and the horse wandered up into my area. I saw the horse's color as split right down the middle, half black and half white. Strangely, this split was front half and back half, not right and left, as you might think. I knew that the old man's spirit was sharing the horse's body, and so one of the colors was him. I think I knew which color was what was which at the time. I just don't remember. The funny thing is that I saw was in fact not something wild, just like, oh look, the horse is half Indian spirit. FYI, when I'm sober, I don't actually believe in anything paranormal at all, including God. For a while, when I was younger, there was a white cat and a medium-sized black dog that would interchangeably follow me, always in my peripheral, and if I looked directly at them, I wouldn't be able to see them. I've seen Bigfoot before. I was with my cousin at the time of it happening, and he lived in the country timber area near a small town on our reservation. We were out exploring the woods, and there on our way back to his house. We came out of the woods, further from the house than we normally do. It was just a cornfield that we were walking into. So we walked to the other side, because it was more downhill. Anyway, as we were walking, and this was before I got my glasses, so my eyesight was terrible. I've seen a large black figure walking along the tree line towards where we had come out of. I thought it was my cousin's older brother, so I yelled, "Hey, Junior, where are you going?" The tall figure looked at me when I yelled, but kept walking. My cousin tapped and said, "That's not Junior." That's when I noticed he was panicking and just looking down. And I was like, "What do you mean? Who is that?" And he just said, "Let's keep walking." Once we got to his house, he told me that it was Bigfoot that I had yelled at. I swear that I saw a shadow dog walking through my kitchen, and I know it wasn't a corner of the eye thing because I was looking right at it, and it walked around the kitchen table. There's always been a weird room in my house, basically the back office, No idea why. It's a new house, only 7 years old, but it's almost never used, and I used it for exams, but otherwise no one else uses it. Any work gets done elsewhere. It just feels off. Basically, while tripping on a half tab, I'm a seasoned tripper, so this was tiny for me, I went into that room as I was restless. I've never experienced such intense visuals. The ceiling was translucent, and on the other side was just this writhing black, or a faint blackness. It was like it was watching me from this place it didn't belong. May have been the half tab, but it was so vivid and real compared to the 2 tabs before. I've also previously noticed doors being open when I was the only one there, especially the office one. I've counted that 4 times being open with no way for it to be that way. And constant creaking, which I initially thought was pipes, etc., but it only happens on Tuesdays. I'm not kidding. Only Tuesday nights. Every other night, it's as silent as hell. A couple of years ago, I slept over at my sister's house in my baby niece's room. It was 2:38 a.m., and I was woken up by a small dog getting on the bed with me and settling itself down to sleep. I reached out to touch it. It was really comforting, and then I realized my sister's dog was downstairs and definitely not little. I reached for the dog again, but it had vanished. Sister told me that my niece woke up every night at about 3 a.m. and has always wondered if it was a little dog. The feeling of it being so lovely, I spent the rest of my visit hoping it would come back. I know what you're asking for, but at the same time, it's not. Oh well. I had stayed the night at my best friend's house, and she was knocked out, but I was still messing on my phone when I heard snoring. I rolled over to smack her, but I realized the snoring was not coming from the floor on her side of the bed. I tried looking at the mirror on the other side of the room, but saw nothing. The snoring happened the entire night. I did not sleep well at all. When I was telling my friend and her mom about it the next morning, they told me that it was one of their friend's old dog that still hangs around, and she even had their ashes in the room, too. This might not account since it was a dream, but it definitely freaked me out at the time. When I was in second grade, I had a dream about playing at my front yard with my best friend, and a hawk flew overhead. She did a pretty great imitation of a hawk call back then, so I told her that she could try calling it. She did, and it flew down and landed on her arm, then turned into a man with shoulder-length black hair and a scruffy beard. As soon as this happened, she disappeared from the dream, and another bird flew down and turned into a blonde woman. The amazing portion was that this man tried to give me these instructions of some kind of ritual. They were all leaving. As they were all leaving, I panicked about a question I forgot to ask and ran into the street where they were standing with massive wings, basically using the street as an airplane, as a runway. Then I woke up. I went to school the next day to talk to my best friend, same one from the dream, and before I could tell her about my dream, she said I had the weirdest dream, and she described the exact same 2 people I had dreamt about. Only in hers it was the woman giving the instructions. It freaks me out to this day. My grandfather passed away roughly 8 years ago. Since his passing, we have spotted 2 things that are related to him: state coins and grasshoppers. He brought all the grandkids a poster where you can insert all the state coins and display them off, and the grasshopper part, I'm not sure where it came from. But after he passed, we would see grasshoppers from time to time on my other grandparents' boat out when we were fishing or when I'm with my grandma. Same with the coins. If we were walking somewhere, we could see a quarter on the ground. If it was a state quarter, we would know that he was watching over us. When I was a teenager, I had something weird happen to me. It started when a friend was looking at me strangely and blurted out there was a woman following me. I looked all around, and he was like, "No, she's here, but she's not here." I asked him to explain, but then he was laughing it off, saying he must just be crazy. Soon after, things started moving in my room on their own. The little metal ornamental pieces of my daybed would randomly launch into the air. Scrunchies would be flown at my head. It was the 90s, don't judge. Nothing that ever hurt. It was just annoying. It happened so often that I would bitch at it when it was messing with me. He also did this to 2 of my friends. One of my friends didn't like it, though. She was more of a frenemy anyway, but I'll get into that in a minute. One night I was in bed with the lights off, ready to sleep. My bedroom door was closed and could hear the TV from my aunt was watching in the living room. I felt someone sit down at the end of my bed and heard a woman's voice say my name. I sat up all happy, thinking that my mom had got off early from work and snuck into the room to say good night. It wasn't my mom. I remember being scared shitless. I don't remember anything else. My next memory is waking up that next morning. A few days later, one of my good friends and my other friend were at my house after school. We were watching TV in the living room, then decided to go up to my room to hang out. My friend said she was thirsty and went to the kitchen to get some juice while my other friend went to the room. A minute later, we heard my friend scream from the kitchen. We all ran down there to find her cowering on the floor, crying with three scratch marks on her cheek. One of the scratches even broke the skin, and there was a tiny bit of blood. My other friend was asking her what happened, but she just stayed on the floor, all freaked out. But I knew. I don't know what came over me, but I lost my shit. I started yelling at my invisible house guest. I don't remember everything I said, but it boiled down to, "This is my house, and you are not welcome here." My friends were on the floor looking up at me, yelling at nothing, and it was really weird. They didn't look at me like I was crazy. They were scared. Later, they told me that they saw some sort of big shadow behind me while I was yelling. Then it just sort of turned around and left. I lived in that house for years after that, and nothing else happened since. I saw a large white dog, or wolf, following my team and around the woods after a few days of running through the woods and not eating much in a survival school. According to Native Americans, in my grandmother's church, that supposedly is my spirit animal now. Shrug. So this one is weird and not really scary. My family and I were moving from a house we deemed haunted. We could hear banging on doors and no one was there. We could hear things, see things, all kinds of crap. We had moved everything to the new house, including the pets, and my dad and I went to the old house to do some minor repairs, finished cleaning, and locked up at the old house. The house was completely empty, and we were trying to put a back door on the hinges when I heard my dog's bark echoing through the house. It wasn't coming from the outside, and it was definitely the sound of my dog's bark. But my dog was at the new house. My dad and I looked at each other and just left the door on the floor and left. F that place. Not seen one, but experienced one. I used to have a black cat named Chocolate. He was very old, about 14. We used to cuddle up and watch TV together. I was at school when Chocolate died. My mom had to take her to the vet because she was puking blood, and quite a bit. The vet said that she was too old to give certain medication, and it could still harm her more, so the best option was to put her down. When I got home, my mom had to break the news to me. I was devastated. He was my favorite cat. I know that's bad to say. About 1 or 2 years later, I was laying on the couch watching TV. I felt a cat lay beside me, and it felt like the same fur as Chocolate. I looked, and then the feeling and the cat were gone. I think this was either my mind, or in my mind, or that Chocolate was saying the final goodbye to me. I don't tell this story often because it scares the F out of me. It's really the only reason I believe in the supernatural at all. One night when I was around 5, I was laying awake in bed looking at a book. I looked up towards my window and saw a shadow of a humanoid creature sneak from my window into my closet. The being was about 7 feet tall. I lived in Montana at the time. The memory is 25 years old now. As the details are hard to recall, the appendages were thick. They appeared to have short snouts. There was something towards the top of the shadow that made it look like it had floppy ears, like a dog. The way it moved was quick, classic tiptoe sneak, with its arms out in front and its hands hanging down. I screamed for my parents, but I was too scared to leave my bed. When they came and I told them what I saw, I grew up religious and my dad told me that it was a demon. He prayed that it would leave. On 2 separate occasions I saw something different. It was dark, so a shadow wouldn't be visible. Instead, I saw what I've described as blue pants walking towards the closet. Finally, I take this with a skeptical grain of salt, because it didn't happen to me. I was playing with a friend of mine in a room one day. She looked at the closet and became frightened. She told me that a face had appeared to her on the closet door, and it said, "I'll see you again, and I'll kill you." Her family moved into that house after we left. I looked her up and found that she passed away in 2012. I've tried to find others with similar experiences, but have yet to be successful. I used to live up in New Hampshire, and for a brief period of time was having semi-frequent encounters with shadow people. At the time, I had a job where I wouldn't leave work until about 1 a.m., and I lived in a densely wooded area. For a while, it was bad enough that when I would get home at night, I'd be scared to get out of my car and walk to my front door. Then one night I was driving home, and as I came around a big bend, I looked up at the edge of the tree line. Looking down right at me, it was a giant silver stag. Then I saw silver truly mean it, not gray, not white. It was even shimmering. It was so slightly. He was massive and beautiful, and I immediately felt very calm and safe. I closed my eyes for a split second because I knew that what I was looking at couldn't be real, and when I looked back, he was gone. I never saw another shadow person after seeing the silver stag, and that feeling, that calmness that came over me. Sometimes I wonder if he was some sort of guardian. My girlfriend and I had just had her boxer put down after a lingering illness. I had a dream a few nights later of her dog coming into the kitchen and then leaving, and of me turning to my girlfriend and saying, "Did you see that?" In the dream, she hadn't. I was asleep a few nights later and had a vivid dream of her dog coming into the room and jumping up onto the bed, then laying on my chest. I could feel his weight, and I struggled to come out of the sleep so that I could see him. I managed to wrench my eyelids open. It's very hard for me to surface from this type of vivid dream, and I could see his silhouette against the dark of the room before it slowly faded. My cousin was living in a newer apartment and had just been having some issues. Several occurrences of her toddler waking up when someone wasn't there and fighting with them, of her being attacked by something and waking up with marks and scratches, etc. She went to work when all of this was going on, and at the time, her and her mom worked together in a government building on night shift, and the parking lot had cameras that the employees had access to. They watched a large black figure that looked vaguely dog-like, but with no definition, just a black silhouette, basically creep around the parking lot, staying by my cousin's car. This happened twice. Then the second night she saw it, she went back home and stopped having problems. My mom and I live out in the middle of the woods in a rural area with my grandparents, quarter of a mile down the road. Or you could travel through the woods the back way about half a mile and get to their house from ours. You couldn't take a vehicle back there except ATVs or be on foot. Every time after that day we saw the figure I saw in those woods. It would chase alongside me as if I were on an ATV, and I knew with absolute certainty that if it ever caught up with me, I would be dead. I don't know why it was trapped in those woods, or why it followed my mom home to attack me, but it was one of the most horrifying things in my childhood. And before you say I might have imagined it, because my mom told me about it. I told her about seeing the figure in the woods before she mentioned seeing it on camera. So there you go. There's some more stories. There's actually probably enough to do a third video, so we might do that because these are fascinating. And whether you believe them or not, they're still good stories to listen to and imaginative, entertaining, which I hope is what you're getting out of this. Anyway, thank you again for listening and watching. Please leave a like or maybe subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment down below on any of these videos. I will read them, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.